This is a photograph of John Saltmarsh, taken in 1935. Saltmarsh was a farmer's son who arrived at King's to study history, and never left. After graduating with a first, he became a college archivist, and later its librarian, and eventually vice provost. He was intensely interested in King's, and especially in its remarkable chapel. Saltmarsh often gave tours of the King's College Chapel. Here you can see some of the cards and lantern slides he used when talking to groups. Sometime in the mid-1950s, Saltmarsh was invited to write a book about the history of the building, expanding on the content of his popular lectures. It was suggested that he produce 10,000 words. He had decided that his book should be prefaced by an account of the building works, giving unprecedented detail. When Saltmarsh died in 1974, he still hadn't finished writing his history of the chapel. His legacy to King's included several copies of a manuscript that ran to approximately 220,000 words. His manuscript is full of notes, annotation, and cross-referencing. There are also numerous places in the text where Saltmarsh had handwritten notes to himself, saying check. It's impressive that none of these details have been found to be incorrect. Saltmarsh hoped that one day another historian would finish his great work, and he left an outline of what remained to be done. 2015 marks the 500th anniversary of the completion of the stonework of King's College Chapel and the exceptional fan vaulting that makes it one of the world's architectural masterpieces. Now is the time for Saltmarsh's story to be told. The college wisely decided that rather than try to complete Saltmarsh's book, it should be published as close as possible to how he left it. Although incomplete, the book opens a window onto the medieval world and contains a wealth of minutely researched detail that creates a vivid picture of the day-to-day making of an iconic building. Saltmarsh's book charts the development of the chapel, right from the purchase of a plot of land in the middle of Cambridge under the direction of Henry VI. He had initially imagined a college of a rector and just 12 scholars. As time went by, Henry's plans became increasingly ambitious and more land was purchased. Several existing buildings, including a church and half a street, were demolished. The costs of fulfilling Henry's vision were huge, and when politics intervened, construction ground to a halt. For several decades, the chapel stood partially built in the centre of town. The dismal sight of the unroofed chapel is vividly imagined by Saltmarsh. He wrote, "The shorn-down stumps of its massive buttresses, stepping raggedly lower towards the west like a rough staircase of beheaded forest trees, the yawning gaps where no windows were between them, and beneath the gaps, the stubs of the side chapels on either side, like shallow, unlidded boxes." Differences visible in the exterior stonework show the different periods of construction. Reginald Ely, the first master mason, used white magnesium limestone, quarried in Yorkshire. Near the end of the first period, there was a change to oolitic limestone from Northamptonshire. In this photo of the west end of the chapel, you can see that work had not progressed very far in the first period, compared to the east end, where the white magnesium limestone extends further up the buttresses. Funds sent by Henry VII enabled dozens of craftsmen to complete the stone structure of the building. Masons created the fabulous fan vault and the great badges, properly called armorials, which proclaim the marriage of Henry VII's parents, Henry Tudor and Margaret Beaufort. The dragon is a symbol of the Tudors, and the greyhound a symbol of the Beauforts. These splendid creatures make a striking contrast to the tiny carvings of human heads found in the niches, or tabernacles, as the masons would have known them, high up in the interior walls of the chapel. Unlike other Cambridge College chapels, King's Chapel is freestanding, and this sense of isolation certainly adds to its visual impact. The vista from the backs across the river and back lawn to its great door is one of the classic views of Cambridge. But Henry VI intended the chapel to be part of an enclosed courtyard around the lines of the chapels of earlier colleges. The enclosed courtyard follows the tradition of the monastic cloister, creating a community and protecting the college from incursions. Between the college's front court and King's Parade now stands a screen built by William Wilkins in the 1820s. The stunning engraving was made by David Logan in the 17th century. You can see signs that the original intention had been for the front court to be enclosed, with buildings on all four sides. There are no side chapels where the planned east and west ranges were meant to join the chapel. The college's subsequent architects felt it more appropriate not to close up the corners of the front court. That is why the chapel stands alone today. The creation of a magnificent building is as much about money, organisation and craftsmanship as it is about visionary design. Workmen need to be paid, they need somewhere to sleep and something to eat. For much of his research in the King's Archive, Saltmarsh drew on the medieval building accounts and contracts. These fortnightly accounts list wages and expenses associated with procuring and transporting building materials. Here you can see the wages paid to individuals of various crafts in a particular fortnight. Additional information came from the college's Mundum books, annual accounts written in Latin that record the college's outgoings. Saltmarsh's close reading of these records enabled him to draw up detailed tables which show the seasonal pattern of work on the chapel and the sourcing of materials, right down to the ropes used for pulleys and sieves. A meticulous researcher, Saltmarsh was once described as an unacknowledged master of prose. His highly individual writing style would be difficult to imitate. As he grew older, he became more of a perfectionist and increasingly distracted by new discoveries, and he hated editorial interference. The publishing of his book, as he left it, is a fitting tribute to someone who dedicated much of his life to understanding precisely what went into the making of one of the world's most extraordinary buildings. Here is a photograph of Saltmarsh taken by an undergraduate in 1965. He is leaning on a bridge at King's, just a short walk from the great west door of the chapel. In this image of the famous Cambridge view taken 4 years earlier, you can see the chapel's choristers lined up for a photograph. Each Christmas Eve, millions of people around the world tune into the BBC to hear their voices fill the candlelit space created 500 years ago.